Hello everyone. We had just gotten back from Montreal and decided to do another primer, much like the one that we did with High Seas. I feel like I have a good enough understanding of the set to make another one of these primers, hopefully help get you a little bit more introduced to the set before your inevitable pre-release, a bit more of how the heroes work. Without any further ado, let's hop into it. Go over the course of what we're going to talk about in this video. First, I am going to handle this video a little bit differently than the last one. The last one I had talked about all of the cards more towards what class they were good and just what class they were in. So I talked about all the generic cards and all the pirate cards, and then I talked about the gravy cards and the puffin cards and so on and so forth. But because of how much crossover there is between each and hero to hero, I'm instead going to be talking about the cards that are more relevant to the hero's game plan when I'm talking about the hero in particular. So when I'm talking about KO, I will talk about the cards that you're looking towards when making KO. Same for Leith, same for the rest of them. I'm going to go over the helmets as well before we go into the hero. And part of the reason why is because I feel like all of the helmets are pretty good, and I just want to explain why that is out of all of the equipment. I'll go over why it's good in each individual hero in the hero section, but I do want to talk about the helmets aside from that. Then we'll go over all of the heroes, starting with the reviled heroes and ending with the revered heroes. Let's get into the equipment. So there are 3 helmets. Super Slam. There's only 3 that I'm talking about. We're going to be going over the trait helmets first, which is the revered helmet and the reviled helmet. They are really simple. They both have blade break 1, and the revered one says when this blocks, the crowd cheers you, and the reviled one says when this blocks, the crowd boos you. Now, these are at a base level 2 points of value, because whatever the boo for your hero is worth 1 point of value, and the blade break itself is worth 1 point of value. So the helmets are just at a generic level worth 2 points of value. They can help prevent on hits, they can help set up other turns, which is part of why we're going to go over in the specific heroes, is because a lot of these help you set up turns. But the final helmet that I want to talk about, which is a generic helmet, is the Helm of Hindsight. Now, I almost always prefer the 2 helmets, either the Despised or Adored, but you cannot always pull them, or pull them in the hero that you're playing. In which case, this is a very solid second choice. Being able to recur a card of your choice onto the top of your deck at its lowest value allows you to draw into another blue that you might need, or a block 3. Realistically, it's allowing you to play your powerful attack again. If you have a Cries of Encore, one of Palladius' strongest attacks, then you can recur it and send it again. Or if you're a KO, you can get a big bully again. So the Helm of Hindsight is very nice because it allows you to recur cards. In other cases, you can use it in response to a card that is clashing to put a high attack value card on the top of your deck to ensure that you win your clashes, which could help you stay alive in some situations, like if you are defending against a Reckless Stampede. So, I feel like that kind of explains the helmets. And then, as mentioned, we'll talk about the class-specific helmets and why they're relevant for those heroes in just a second. So, as I mentioned, first we're going to start with the reviled heroes, and specifically KO. So KO is our reviled brute for the set. In my opinion, he is one of the simpler decks to play. He is one of the more simple game plans. He's basically aggro. He wants to send a card, realistically as many cards as possible, block with the cards that he can't convert on, and his game plan is to end the game quickly, most of the time. His hero ability, at first look, seems pretty good. You can pitch 4, tap him to convert any attack into 6 attack, into base 6. The tricky thing about this is that this is such a set designed around 3 for 7 attacks, which is why it'll be an ongoing joke with a lot of people, that it is the 3 for 7 set, where you block with 2 cards, covering preferably 6 if they're both block 3s, and then you pitch 3, send 7, and you do that as many times in the game. And there is a lot of validity in that. So KO's ability does not really have much oomph past that, because he's just making it up to 6, and we're probably requiring 2 cards from your hand and then the card that you're buffing. It's just not great value. But that is where he has some advantages, and mostly is that it is base, and there are a lot of cards in the set that buff their attacks, that buff their attack alternatively and don't affect their base, and I want to go over some of those. First, and probably the most relevant, is Flex Strength. Now, Flex Strength comes in all 3 colors, but the best color is blue. And the reason why is because you can pitch it early, you can block with it because they all block for 3, but more importantly, if you were activating this ability, it all has base of 6 anyways, so it doesn't really matter. The only reason why the red ones are better is in case you have smaller attack buffs and you're not planning on using KO's ability. Like if you have 2 might, then you can send a red one off of 2 might, and it can get to 6, sending it for 9, and that's a pretty nice 2-card 9. But you do require those might, and your deck might not work with it. But the blues are always good and should always be ran whenever you're playing this deck. The reason why is it just allows you to get more value out of your hero ability, which is kind of key to playing this deck well, or to at least getting more value out of it. So Flex Strength is 1 attack. If you use his ability, it basically comes in for 9, because base 6 meets the condition, gets +3, sends it in for 9. It's still not huge value, but it's good. It's 3-card 9, it's pretty nice. A couple of the other attacks. Punch Above Your Weight. Punch Above Your Weight, specifically in red, because they all have base 2. All 3 colors have base 2, and the color affects its plus modifier. Punch Above Your Weight is basically a 2-card 7, but if you have extra cards in your hand, you are able to pay into it to give it +5. KO can make it a base 6, and then when you pay into an additional amount, it comes in for the +5 for a total of 11. Now, this is a way to convert off of your higher blue hands, or if you don't want to block as much. It also just allows you to pressure more damage, which is something that this deck actually really struggles with. Despite kind of having an aggro game plan and kind of wanting the game to end as quickly as possible, you don't really have many ways to get there. And there are some go again cards. Flex Speed is one of which. However, to get Flex Speed up to its 6 base to gain go again, you kind of have to pay a lot, unless you have other forms to give it additional might other than KO specific ability. There's a brute card there it is, Buckwild. There's Buckwild, which says if a card with 6 or more is in your pitch zone, it does go again. So there are ways for you to get go again, and there are ways for you to convert higher hands, but in most cases, you want to end the game faster, but you don't have any ways to convert your hands offensively, so you have to block to gain most value. Punch Above Your Weight is one such way where you can still gain higher value. A couple other really good cards that are good to keep in mind to try to send to your opponent is other blue attacks that gain bonuses from something. Anything that doesn't affect its base and instead would just add something onto the base once you activate his ability gets even bigger. So offensive behavior is just a way to get extra value. Mocking Blow is a way to have a higher hitting attack. When building the deck, you kind of want to keep an eye out for these types of cards. They are really make or break towards the deck. Two final cards that I want to talk about. I mentioned it a bit earlier, but Big Bully. Big Bully is an unbelievably hard-hitting card. It costs 2 and comes in for base 4, but it says that if you have more life than your opponent, the crowd boos you, and then if you've been booed this turn, this base is doubled, which means that when you activate KO's ability, it turns the base to 6, and then this comes in for 12. Now, this is a 3-card 12, which in CC terms is not tremendous value, but what makes this better is that there are other ways to add onto it. If you have the gloves that allow you to pay to pitch, it is just a way to send more damage. It is a really reliable card. If you have it, it's amazing. This does come with a few issues, though. For it to have its base doubled, you have to be booed. And some of the matchups, it's really difficult to be booed in. Depending upon how tempo is currently handled, in either of the Guardian matchups, they could just have more life than you. If they've had a power hitting turn before you draw this, then odds are you'll be at lower life than them and kind of be trying to play a better math game because you have reasonably better math. They are trying to set up a overpowered, confident turn to kind of one-shot you, and you're playing this kind of mid-game tempo-y, aggro-y play style. If you drop Big Billy before then you probably can get booed. If you don't, though, it's realistically a block 3 because it's really difficult to get that boo from having more life. That being said, there are many cards that can trigger booed through other methods, like Villainous Pose. Villainous Pose just says the crowd boos you. Any card that just boos you on command works really well with Big Bully in any matchup because you can force the proc and force the base to be doubled. So it's great. The final card that I want to talk about is Feisty Locals. Now, Feisty Locals is interesting. I am personally a huge fan of this card in both the Reviled Heroes, but we'll talk about it in Leith when we talk about it in Leith. But the reason why I like this card so much is because it is great in endgames, honestly. It forces an overcommitment from your opponent. And because of the overcommitment, it's going to get buffed. Whether you actually activate KO's ability or not doesn't matter. Because when they're at lower life totals, they have to respect the card that's coming in for 8. Because that's what this card is threatening. You send it in for 1. If you activate KO, it goes up to 6. If they are blocking with an action card, it goes up to 8. So they have to overblock it to a degree. And what this causes is it makes it a lot easier for you to fatigue them. Now, you're not really able to go into any matchups with the plan to fatigue them. It's kind of something that you have to pivot to and play to, but this is a card that's very good, and more importantly, on those turns where you send it and they overblock, you don't have to activate KO. So if you have a Feisty Locals that you're playing and another Locals in hand, and they overblock and cover it, then you just arsenal the second Locals and you do it again. So it's a really great card. Additionally, cards like this, cards that demand so many more cards from your opponent to block, are really good in fatiguing. Tough Note's game plan is kind of to play better math than everyone else and having a good avenue for fatigue. So it is tricky, but if you approach the matchup and are able to fatigue them, then it's a thing to kind of pivot to. Nearly all of my games that I played against Tough Nut at the event as KO, I won through fatigue. I never planned on it from the start. You play aggro, you play fast, they're really good at blocking, and they'll prevent a lot of damage. Some will get through, you'll take some damage, but there will be a moment where you will be able to send a card like this, and it is threatening lethal, and if they don't overblock it, they will die from your activation, and you just don't activate it, and then they're always a turn behind. That about covers it for KO. He's also really good with the Intimidate cards, Instill Fear, and Bully Tactics. However, the Intimidate cards are, in my opinion, a lot of the times hit and miss. They're amazing against Tough Nut. They're not really great against Leith half the time, and they can be good against the other two heroes, depending upon what you banish when you banish. It's Intimidate. It's sometimes amazing, it's sometimes negligible. Now we get to talk about Leith, the first Intellect 5 hero, which is cool. Leith is fun. He's a lot more different than what I thought he'd be, which, admittedly, I think is a good thing. I didn't think that I would like this hero very much, and upon playing him, I think that he is fun. This is coming from a wizard player that likes to combo, admittedly, but he sets up these more powerful turns and plays a very interesting aggro high rolly type game. So his ability is that his base attack and defense for all cards are halved. If a card comes in for 5, it comes in for 3, either offensive or defensive. And when you activate his ability, you are able to trigger the crowd booing you on command, which will create you a might and say that all of your defending action cards have +1. So basically, your defending card that blocks for 3 will first have its base halved to 2, and then gains +1 going it back to 3. If your blocking card is blocking for 2, it will go back to 1, and then you get +1. So it's nice. It allows you to sustain. One important thing to remember is that this only works on action cards, and nearly all of the new auras are instances. Despite having block values, that's kind of new. So it did trick a lot of people because a lot of people were confused about it. But it only works on actions. So if you have like an Act of Glory and you're trying to block with it, you can still activate his ability to grab the extra might from the crowd booing you, but you ain't gonna get the +1 block value on those instances. So keep that in mind. So Leith's game plan, as kind of mentioned, he uses auras and attack buffs to set up crazy powerful turns. And he can do this because he has extra intellect. A lot of these attacking buffs are a little expensive. They take time. He has both of those. He has the extra resources to pay into them, and a lot of the times he doesn't need to win fast. He just needs to win early. So he can play a little bit slower. He can try to set up these power turns. And then once he has them, he will literally one-shot you. I've seen a Leith do 30 points of damage with Intimidate 3 in a single turn. The deck can be kind of busted when you high roll. It is very high rolly when it hits. So let's talk about his attacks. His attacks, similar to KO, he benefits a tremendous amount anytime the attack is buffed by not its base. So again, feisty locals, it's good for the same reasons it is in KO. It forces an overcommitment on blocks, which helps in fatigue. However, Leith isn't really a deck that wins through fatigue. It's actually the thing he struggles against and is tough nut strategy into. Keep that in mind. Feisty locals helps a lot. Feisty locals can also buff itself. Punch above your weight is amazing because punch above your weight is a way to basically send a 2-card 6, which for other decks is below rate, but when you have 3 other cards from your extra intellect, it is amazing. Mocking Blow is fantastic, especially because you can trigger an on-command boo if necessary. These are a couple of the amazing cards. Another one that's great is Low Blow. Because you can trigger a boo on your turn, you can very easily meet the conditions for this, and then this basically comes into a 2-card 6, because it requires 2 resources to pay into Leith's ability, which will boo you, creating a might, which is 1 point of value, and then this has a base of 3, halved it's 2, gets +3. Totals for 5 damage this turn and 1 damage next turn for 2-card 6, which again, for most decks is okay, but for Leith is amazing. The other card is Power Play. Power Play is a card that I am a pretty big fan of in, honestly, both the Guardian Heroes, but I like the card. I'm biased. So, in red, yellow, blue, has base attack 3-2-1. In Leith, you can run the yellows, but the yellows and the blues hit for the same amount, because base is halved. Basically, if it comes from Arsenal, it hits for +5, and that's its effect. So it's another way to send in a Leith 2-card 6 or a Leith 2-card 7. It's really good. Power plays, you should run as many of them as you can, and just in general, it's a blue block 3 if you have the blue ones. So it's a good card. Now that we talked about some of the attacks, I want to talk about the methods to buff your cards. And the first one is actually another attack. Because if you have a bunch of buffs, then you can attack with a low-hitting attack that has a good effect, which is Bask in Your Own Greatness. Bask in Your Greatness has base 4-3-2 for red, yellow, blue, and has the effect that when you attack with it, you can pitch up to 3 and create a might equal to the amount that you pitch into it. This is a way that you can either set up might for your actual power turn, or you can send it on a mini power turn and create more might to try to keep a continuous pressure flow going. Use an Act of Glory this turn, in the air, and 3 might break next turn, so you are always able to send it that are hitting harder than they should. So Bask in Your Own Greatness is good. Sets up 3 might. Another way that you set up 3 might is through Cruel Ambition. Cruel Ambition, it's really simple. It creates 3 might. And let's go again. I like it. can't explain anything past that. It has higher value because you have a higher intellect hero, so things that aren't negated by Leith's ability are just by definition higher rate than you would initially see. So Cruel Ambition is nice. Moving away from the reviled might generation, we are going to go to the Guardian auras. There are many new auras of suspense. The hardest hitting one being Act of Glory. It costs 4, enters the arena with 2 suspense counters. When both suspense counters are gone, your next attack is +6, and at the start of your turn, you remove a suspense counter. Now, as mentioned, these are instances, which allows you to play them on your opponent's turn. So if your opponent goes first, then they play whatever, doesn't really matter, then you can flash these out and play them on their turn and then draw back up, which is a really techy move and makes going first as a Guardian in the Guardian Mirror a little interesting because you can both play auras on the other person's turn turn 1, so you wonder where you can get your value, how you can get your value. Act of Glory comes in for 4 and it buffs for 6 when it leaves. Each color down removes by a counter of 1, the same moving forward. Edge of the Sheets, same thing but for 5, and it costs 3. Tension in the Air is the same thing, but it's for 4 and costs 2. All of these auras are great. Depending upon your deck, their price points can be valued differently, and you kind of have to judge how their price points are based off your deck. But they're all really good. They're all pretty strong ways to buff your attacks, and I'm sure that you can kind of see that if you have 2 Tensions in the Air and an Act of Glory, and they all pop on the same turn, you're sending an attack in for a metric ton. And that is kind of how the deck works. Get a lot of auras in play, they all crack on the same turn, swinging an attack for 20, 21, 22, 30, as mentioned. I never swung an attack for 30, but I saw it happen, or close to 30, I think it was like 29. So it's a very kind of the game plan. Moving away from those, I want to talk about the powerful Leith buff, which is Leave Them Hanging. So Leave Them Hanging, when it enters play, it intimidates target hero, and then when it leaves the arena, same suspense 2 system, your attack is +4, cost 3. This is great. If it's your turn, you can play it to intimidate your opponent. They block less. Against some heroes, it's worth more. As mentioned, this is one of the ways that you kind of need to win versus Tough Nut as Leith, is you need to intimidate cards out of their hand because they are really good at blocking your attacks, because they are a very strong blocking deck. If they have multiple toughness in play, it's just really difficult. So you can intimidate them, prevent 1 card, or you can do it on your opponent's turn. If your opponent has a trigger and a limited amount of cards in hand, if they have a trigger that you can respond to and play this before they have a chance to attack, then you can get huge value by just heavily disrupting their turn. If they pay into their gauntlets to give their next attack +2, and then you hold and then banish their attack, there's nothing they can do. Their turn just ends, and you break their gloves. This works for like their chess piece or any other trigger. Leave Them Hanging is a very powerful card. Obviously, it's a Majestic. Majestics are powerful and sealed. As mentioned, don't really want to talk about this anymore. So, but very powerful card. It was a buff, so I felt like I should have included it. The last thing I want to talk about, Leith in particular, is his blocking. With his ability, it's kind of interesting. It costs 2, and it allows blocking cards to block for 1 additional. But the interesting thing is, what do you do with that 1 floating? Say that you're pitching a blue, which you always want to be. Then you're paying 2 to his ability, and you have 1 floating. There are 2 cards that I'm going to mention that are very good to use. And the first one is the reprinted Brothers in Arm. Brothers in Arm is great. You pay 2, you pay into his ability, you create a might, and then you can pay into Brothers in Arms, blocking for 4. It's amazing. When you're trying to block, it's good. Admittedly, you're not trying to block a ton. That's not the game plan, but it's good. So I'm mentioning it, and it's important to know how to block as this deck. And sometimes you need to build the block to deck. Blue Brothers in Arms are always kind of accepted. So the other one is Toby Jugs. These are one of your boots. It's another way to get 1 value out of your block, or 1 value out of your floating pitch. Activate his ability, send in the boots. And because these boots get +2, they actually meet the criteria of they're not base, so they won't be halved, so they will actually block for 2. Yeah, it's another very solid way to ensure that you get full value out of your pitched card. All right, I said I would talk about the helmets in the heroes. So let's go back to Horns of the Despised. So, this is Horns of the Despised. It is Blade Break 1, when this defense crab boos you. For Leith, it's really simple. You can block, helps prevent an on-hit if you want, and it'll boo you. When you're booed, you create a might. It does not mean much beyond just 2 points of value, 1 defensively, 1 offensively. It's good. It's by far your best helmet, especially because a lot of the times you don't have attacks that you really care about recurring in Leith, unless like you have a bully tactics. Like if you have a good card, you could want to recur it, but in most cases, your attacks are not the cards that you would care about recurring, it's your attack buffs. It's so good in Leith and is the helmet I would run. But here what it's better for is KO, and the reason why is because KO's ability costs 4, and that's an interesting note. Sometimes it works really well. Going back to Flex Strength, which is one of the better cards to play off of it, if you pitch 2 blue, you can pay 2 of your 6 resources into Flex Strength, and then you have 4 floating, just enough to activate KO's ability, allowing your Flex Strength to come in for 9. That's all well and good. But when you're attacking with a card, this doesn't cost anything, but it still requires you to pitch the 2 blue to activate KO's ability. This is not good, obviously, because you're losing tons of value. If you have the gloves that allow you to pay 2 to activate to give your next attack +2, then it's decent because you're able to capitalize on your floating pitch. But if you don't have those gloves, or if you've already used those gloves, that's where the helmet comes in clutch, because KO's ability is when you are booed, you create a vigor. So basically, the helmet allows you to activate your hero ability off of 1 blue rather than 2. Which for those turns with the feisty locals are really good and allow you to convert on a lot of value because you can either arsenal the other card or you can just block with it. So it's good. The helmet's really good. It's really important. I feel like the helmet's more important than in KO than it is in Leith, but it's armor, so more life is more life, especially on on Leith that does not block well. So that is the helmets in the reviled heroes. The revered heroes. So, first Pleiades, who is probably my favorite hero out of the set. I'm a huge fan of Leith as well, but I loved being able to manipulate the suspense counters, removing them, adding them, gaining turn over turn value on the cheaper suspense cards, the one that gives you +1, or the one that prevents 1 damage, or the one that makes your first attack 1 card cheaper. These are just cards that I interact with and move counters to keep them in the game longer because I thought it was fun. I liked the little interaction point. So I'm a fan of the deck. Additionally, she is probably the queen of the game plan of just send 7s. That's kind of how the deck works. It's kind of how half these decks work, but with hers, it does as well. She's really good at sending 7s. A couple of those 7s. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm mostly just going to go over this one. First one is Cries of Encore. Cries of Encore is a good card. It's majestic, and majestics are typically good. It allows you to be cheered. When she's cheered, she will create a confidence token. Confidence token says that a card can only be blocked by 2 non-block cards. There are block cards in this set, a couple, so they are still able to be blocked out, but if decks aren't running them, didn't pull them, don't have them in hand, it is a very good way how to force over a high-hitting damage turn. And similar to Leith, she has access to nearly all of those, if not more, card buffing attacks. She still has the primary active glory, edge of their seat, tension in the air, and can still use them, except unlike Leith, she can control them better. So if Leith has them off sequence, say that he plays 1 on turn 1, 1 on turn 2, then one will have 1 counter, one will have 2 counters, and he will just have to attack twice in back-to-back turns. But with her, she can activate her ability to remove a counter, and she doesn't actually have to put them on another one, so she can just destroy a counter, which causes the extra aura to break so that her auras go off at the same time. So her being able to manage her auras allows her to command when her attacks go off at a higher efficiency than Leith does. And if they're under confidence, you are able to send massive amounts of damage that is not really blockable. So back to the attack of Cries of Encore. Cries of Encore is a 3/7. It's majestic. Not going to talk about it much. It has a good effect. A couple of the other ones is like Turn the Crowd Grateful. Turn the Crowd Grateful is amazing into either the reviled heroes. It on hit cheers. Cheers is great because it's confidence. Confidence is kind of your win. You can win just through good math, but it's difficult to win through good math into KO. It's probably unwinnable. I've never won a match. I've never tried to play a back and forth 3/7 game into Tough Nut and won. I've always needed to stack my auras and send it under confidence to kill them because they just block so much better than you. And against Leith, I have won playing a 3/7 game plan, but because of how hard they hit with their high roll, you kind of have to get off a decent starting turn or a decent tempo and swing into things, because otherwise, if they can just full tank an attack from you, like on a turn, and they can just keep their entire hand, they have the potential to really set up. And if they set up and you're not setting up, then they will win. So her 3/7s are good. Turn the Crowd Grateful. There's one that's good against veered heroes as well, but I don't remember its name. Like Who's the Tough Guy is another one. They're good 3/7s. And she is good at sending 3/7s because she doesn't mind blocking to sending 3/7s. But on the other side is she does make huge use of those auras. And using those auras are realistically how I feel like the deck should be played. Being able to manipulate these auras is how you can gain these huge value on these confidence turns. Confident turns allow you to prevent an opponent from blocking, secure the kill much, much faster. Half the time the confidence doesn't affect much because most decks only want to block with 2 cards from hand, use 2 cards to send 2 cards and then block 2 cards. That's their 4-card hand. So confidence doesn't affect most decks most of the time, but if you're sending close to lethal or if you're potentially sending lethal, then it's good because you're able to threaten death. I want to talk about a little bit of the other auras. What happens next is the discount one. So it has suspense 2 counters like the other ones, but it says first card with cost 1 or more. You play this turn, costs 1 less to play. This works for both your turn and the opponent's turn, which is really cool because if you have like an Act of Glory and one of these in play, you can pitch 1 blue on your opponent's turn to send an Act of Glory, which makes that card a lot better. If you don't have to pitch 2 blue to send it, the suspense is killing me as another like this. It gives your first attack +1, and this can be used almost attack react because it is an instant. So if they're low or anything of the sort, then you just flash it in, maybe secure a win like that. If they're playing around it, it's tricky, but sometimes 1 extra damage is just more than a deck that can handle. And then To Be Continued is the prevention 1. All of these can be really good if they keep 1 around. I played against a Politis that kept a To Be Continued around for like 6 turns and just prevented so much damage from it. Getting huge value off of these and honestly not losing much value from removing suspense counters from other things is just good. Yeah, that is the auras. That's what Confidence Token does. Right. So, on to the final hero. I'd like to preface this. I played a lot of the other 3 heroes. Confident enough on the other 3 heroes. Tough Nut I did not play a lot. I was not initially interested in playing the hero, and I only started playing him near the end because I wanted the experience on all 4 heroes. And at the time that I was trying to play him, the pools were just not really designed for him. And I talked to some of my friends, and I tried to make him work sometimes, and it just didn't work. So I never got a good set of games in with Tough Nut. But I did talk with some friends who played a lot of Tough Nut, and I watched a lot of the stream games with Tough Nut on, so I feel I have general enough understanding. But I do want to just say, take this with a grain of salt. I feel somewhat confident, but this is going to be the hero I have the least grasp on. I can only give my rough grasp on. But let's pull up Tough Nut. So, Tough Nut is a good math deck at its base level. He can just send his 3/7s and more importantly, block for 7. Most decks, if they're lucky, will have 2 block 3s, and then they'll send their 3 for 7. He can realistically create a toughness token, which allows him to block for 7, and then send 7. It's just 1 extra point of value. Congratulations. That is my understanding of Tough Nut. That is somewhat of the general idea. When you are cheered as Tough Nut, you create a toughness token. Toughness tokens are really nice. I will explain what it does. So toughness says, at the start of your opponent's turn, break this. Your the next action card you block with gets +1 while defending it. So if you have 1 toughness that breaks, then your action card that blocks for 3 blocks for 4. It's really simple. Toughness, it's really good. So that is what his hero ability is, or half of his hero abilities. Whenever you're cheered, you create a toughness token. Toughness makes your cards block for more. The other line of his text is that you can tap him as an instant, and you pitch the top card of his deck. If it has attack of 6 or higher, then you create the crowd cheers you, and then you create a toughness token. This allows you to, in theory, create infinite amounts of toughness tokens. They would break 1 every turn, obviously, but you could get them nearly every turn. The difficulty with this deck is in being able to still send offensive damage while blocking out. And sometimes you're not going to be able to because you would pitch a red card. Similar to Gravy and how you have to play within the realm of knowing what's off the top of your deck, you have to be prepared for whatever Tough Nut gives you. Sometimes he'll pitch a red card and there is literally nothing you can do. But a lot of the times you can play around it. You can block for 2 and then arsenal a card. Pitch, and if you can't send it, you can't send it. But after you have that arsenal card, you can set up your next turn and keep a card. Block with the 2 cards, keep a card. You have 1 in hand, 1 in arsenal. And then you pitch Tough Nut's a pitch off Tough Nut. If it allows you to play the card from arsenal, then great, play the card from arsenal. And then you have the card in hand. If it doesn't, well, you have the card in hand that you can pitch to play the card in arsenal. And you're able to pivot around it. Now, in nearly every situation, you always want to be paying for everything off of Tough Nut's ability, unless it's very expensive, and then not so, because you just need more pitch than what his ability can provide. You really want to be playing off of his ability, and you want to be activating his ability every turn. Before he untaps, and before the end of your turn, every turn, you want to activate his ability every time, because you need as much toughness as possible to try to live through whatever your opponent's attacks are. You are intellect 3. You do not have the extra cards to send to attack with. You can't decide to just block out your opponent's turn. You can't just block 12 and pass. You are blocking 9. So you need to always be getting toughness every value to ensure that that doesn't happen. Before going into more of the cards, I want to talk about Garland of Spring, which is quite possibly, in my opinion, the most important piece of equipment for Tough Nut. Garland of Spring allows you to still send your attack from arsenal if your top deck is bad. You pitch a red, but if your attack costs 2, Garland of Spring, send it in off of those 2, and then arsenal your card instead of pitching it. It's just a way how to still get value. I probably would only use it in those types of situations. You could obviously use it in a more high-rolly situation if you have Buck Wild and things like that, but it is a thing that I have seen it done. So, but Garland of Spring is a very important piece of equipment. You definitely want it if you have it. You can run the other ones as well, but that's the one you want. Besides from that, you want cards that hit above 6, because you want to try to trigger his ability as commonly as possible. So any of the revered cards that hit for above 6, any of the brute cards that attack for above 6 are kind of good cards. Additionally, cards that clash are pretty good. You can win most clashes pretty reliably. All of your attacks should hit harder than KO's, because KO kind of wants to play cheaper attacks. He can block 2 and send 3 for 7s if the deck allows, and that's why he partially does run 3 for 7s. But for the most part, he's playing a lot more blues and wants a higher blue count. Leith is playing cheaper attacks that don't have high base. So against the other revered heroes, you can struggle to win clashes, but it's still good. Additionally, another card that is amazing in Tough Nut is right behind you. Right behind you is a card that blocks base 2, gets +1 if it's blocking with another card from your hand, but it allows you to look at the top card of your deck and choose to put it at the bottom of your deck. This basically tells you what you're going to tough nut into while blocking 3. I don't know if I would run it in every color, because I would probably run it in every color if I'm playing a tough nut, but it depends on your polls, obviously. It's a very good card. Otherwise, good cards are cards that have attack over 6, or that clash. Or Smash Up is one such. I mentioned Buckwild. Buckwild is good if you need more of a go again turn. In some cases, your win con is really threatening more damage quickly, in which case Buckwild kind of helps with that. Tough Smash Up is another one of those attacks that have a defense on clash. Dig In is a pretty good card because when you block with it, you can pitch 3 to create that many toughness tokens if your opponent is sending a smaller attack. This is a good way to get more value out of your hand as opposed to just blocking more. As far as I'm aware, that is kind of the way that the deck is played. He can win through deck damage, and he can win through just straight damage. Most of the time, I see Tough Nuts trying to play towards a fatigue point. As mentioned, I did not really ever do well as the deck, so I cannot speak for how the deck should play at all times. I feel like it is a good average tempo deck, and I feel like it does have very strong fatigue avenues. I feel like that's what it should do into Leith. I feel like that's what it can do into Pleiades, but I think that if they set up their auras, it's kind of hard to win. But it is a tricky deck. It is not quite at the very high end level. It's not quite the block 2 blind send card. It can very much be block 2 blind 7, and it can very much be your opponent has to win or lose the game and you're just along for the ride. I do totally believe the deck can be like that, but I am starting to think that there's a lot more nuance behind the deck, and I just unfortunately have not found it. There's a lot of really good Tough Nut gameplay on the streamed games, and I'm sure that there will be other people talking about it, so if Tough Nut is the deck that you seem more interested in, perhaps another video like that is more your style. I believe that wraps up this video. I kind of talked about all of the heroes. I didn't talk about the helmets, did I? I can talk about the helmets real quick. The helmets are actually pretty important. The Tough Nut one, the helmet's really simple. We're gonna back up. Of the Adored. In Tough Nut, Helmet of the Adored is easy. It's just basically two value block. It blocks for 1, it creates a toughness, which helps you block for 1. It's 2 block unless your opponent doesn't attack you when you have the toughness, and then it's 1 value. It's still good. In Pleiades, it is really good because it creates an on-demand confidence, which is unbelievably good when you have a bunch of auras. If you have 5 auras or 4 auras or 3 auras or whatever your number is, if you have a bunch of auras that are about to pop on the same turn, you can block with this helmet to create a confidence to swing in for 25 underconfidence, which means that realistically your opponent can only block for 6, take 19 unless they have blocks in their hand, which is just it's her way to close and finish the game out. And one thing that I would like to mention real quick with confidence, because I saw a lot of people get this wrong at the event, confidence is not dominate. And what I'm trying to emphasize with that is that equipment count as cards being blocked with. You cannot block with 2 cards from hand and then equipment. It is 2 cards that do not have the block talent. That's the wrong word, but that do not have the block attribute. That includes equipment, that includes D-reacts, needs to have the block value. Doesn't care where it's from. In zone, in hand, in arsenal, 2 non-block cards. So don't plan out your blocks and then feel like you can block with your equipment, because you unfortunately cannot. Cards that increase the block value of cards on the chain, that still works though, because they're not actually blocking, they're just affecting the block value of something on the chain. So there's a couple cards like that. Now, I think that we've talked about everything. Talked about all the helmets and the heroes, that the helmets are good. All the equipment's really good, actually. The punching gloves are pretty nice. I'm a fan of the punching gloves because it allows you to convert higher value off of hands where you have higher card value. Because a lot of times your opponent might set up, and then when they set up, you'll just have the extra card in hand, and instead of letting it go to waste, you can pitch into punching gloves, so I'm a fan of it. There's a lot of gloves that have token generation effects. There are a lot of gloves that just block as well. Most of those gloves just blade break 1, which are always good. So all the equipment's pretty nice. But yeah, that goes over all 4 of the heroes. Sorry again about not being as in-depth or possibly correct about Tough Nut. Ultimately, can only do so much, and by the time that I had started like working on Tough Nut and taking notes, the pools just decided not to give it to me. So I forced it as much as I could, tried to learn as much as I could, but might be incorrect or outdated. But yeah, otherwise I feel that this should be more than enough to get you started, or at least know what you're looking for. I didn't go over all of the cards in all of these situations, but I mostly wanted to talk about the types of cards and what the kind of effects are that you're looking for. I did talk about most of them, or like half of them. These are the cards that the decks are looking for. When you're looking to draft those decks, look for these types of cards. That wraps this video up, and good luck to you on your pre-releases. I am hoping to have another video out soon on the new Armory deck that just came out. We'll see if that can be done soonish. I'm hoping so, but still jet lagged and a little bit tricky on some of the production. But we're working on it. We're hoping to have that completed soon. So hopefully it is. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you do, check out our other videos that we do. As mentioned, I want to do the Armory deck video where we're going to be playing a game. But yeah, I wish you luck at your pre-releases. Take care.